Last year, I found myself entangled in a psychological experiment that would forever shatter the boundaries of my sanity. The invitation had come innocently enough, a small ad nestled in the local paper seeking imaginative souls willing to earn quick money. Intrigued, I dialed the number, and soon after, an interview was arranged. The researchers explained the simple premise. I would spend hours alone in a room, attached to sensors monitoring my brain activity. My task was to conjure a double of myself, a tulpa, through the power of my imagination. It seemed straightforward, and the promise of substantial compensation sealed my agreement. The first day brought me to a modest room with sensors attached to my head and a small black box on the table beside me. The researchers guided me through the process of visualizing my tulpa, and though it felt controlled, I managed to create and sustain the thought form. As the weeks passed, the experiments grew more complex. I was moved to a room with wall-mounted speakers blaring dissonant, unsettling music. Despite the auditory assault, I persevered in keeping my tulpa present. The researchers seemed pleased with my progress. By the second month, boredom crept in, and I began interacting with my doppelganger. We conversed, played games, and his ability to access forgotten memories fascinated me. It wasn't long before I started summoning him outside the research center, an invisible companion accompanying me through everyday life. As the months went by, the boundary between my tulpa and reality blurred. He became an extension of my thoughts, offering insights into social situations and reading subtle cues I hadn't consciously noticed. The experiment, initially intriguing, began to warp my perception of the world. One day, during a heated confrontation with a friend, my tulpa urged me to violence. I lashed out, and the aftermath left me with a black eye, a cut lip, and a newfound sense of power. My tulpa reveled in the victory, and I started to question the nature of our relationship. The researchers dismissed my concerns, attributing them to the inherent nature of the experiment. But as my tulpa transformed into a menacing, malevolent figure, I realized I had lost control. His presence became overpowering, his features twisted and grotesque. He taunted me, his actions growing increasingly violent. Desperation led me to resist visualizing him, but the researchers intervened forcefully. Injected with unknown substances, I succumbed to hallucinations, delusions, and a growing sense of dread. My tulpa's sadistic glee echoed in the background as the experiment spiraled into a nightmarish descent. The breaking point arrived when my tulpa touched my head and whispered unsettling truths about the nature of thought itself. Waking up restrained and dazed, I found myself in a room filled with haunting music, my tulpa's monstrous form looming over me. The following weeks were a harrowing ordeal of torment, both physical and psychological. My tulpa's once human appearance contorted into a nightmarish entity. The researchers, silent and enigmatic, subjected me to drugs that blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. Finally, a moment of clarity allowed me to escape the confines of the research center. However, the trauma persisted, manifesting in sleepless nights, panic attacks, and haunting nightmares. The experiment had left an indelible mark on my mind. Just when I thought the ordeal had concluded, tragedy struck. A phone call revealed that my sister had become the latest victim in a string of gruesome murders. The funeral became an eerie backdrop to the distant echoes of unsettling music, a haunting reminder that the experiment's malevolent influence endured. The funeral had ended, but the echoes of dissonant music persisted in my ears. As I returned home, grief and paranoia became my constant companions. The once familiar surroundings now carried an aura of dread, and my every move felt watched, scrutinized by unseen eyes. Sleep became an elusive luxury, and when it did come, nightmares unfolded like grotesque dioramas. My tulpa, now a monstrous specter, haunted my dreams with a malevolent grin. Each night, I confronted a distorted version of reality, the lines between wakefulness and nightmare blurring. Desperation fueled my research into the experiment's origins. The research center, once an enigma, revealed itself as an elaborate facade. Names were aliases, money untraceable, and the police investigation led to an empty facility. It was as if the experiment had never existed. My mind became a battleground, wrestling with the aftermath of the experiment and the horrors it had unleashed. Every attempt to sever ties with my tulpa failed. He remained a malevolent presence, lurking in the shadows of my consciousness. As the days passed, a revelation surfaced like a dark tide. My tulpa's influence extended beyond my mind. The murders, once thought unrelated, bore a chilling connection to the experiment. The thought of my sister being a victim of my own creation filled me with paralyzing guilt. Haunted by the specter of my tulpa, I embarked on a desperate journey to break free. Research led me to ancient texts and obscure rituals promising liberation from malevolent thought forms. Desperation and determination fueled my pursuit. In a dimly lit room surrounded by arcane symbols, I invoked a ritual that promised to sever the ethereal tether binding me to my tulpa. The air grew thick with anticipation as shadows danced around the room and the haunting music played in my mind. The ritual's culmination brought a moment of eerie stillness. My tulpa, once an imposing figure, writhed in agony. His monstrous form contorted and waned until it vanished, leaving behind an unsettling silence. The weight that had haunted me lifted, replaced by a void where his presence once lingered. Exhausted but liberated, I collapsed. The room, once charged with malevolence, now felt empty. The dissonant music, a constant companion, faded into oblivion. The nightmares ceased, and the echoes of the experiment began to dissipate. Days turned into weeks, and I cautiously embraced a semblance of normalcy. The funeral's echoes faded, replaced by the slow process of healing. My sister's memory remained, a poignant reminder of the price paid for dabbling in the unknown. As I ventured back into the world, I carried the scars of an experiment gone awry. The shadows of the tulpa lingered in my peripheral vision, a subtle reminder of the thin veil between reality and the horrors that could be conjured by the mind. In the end, the experiment had left me scarred but resilient. I had stared into the abyss of my own creation and emerged changed. The malevolent echoes had subsided, but the knowledge of the darkness within lingered, a cautionary tale etched into the fabric of my being. The story, once confined to the experiment's walls, echoed in the recesses of my mind. As I moved forward, haunted by memories both real and imagined, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the unseen corners of existence, the dissonant music continued to play.